everybody, welcome back to another episode of Brown Girl White Coat. So it's your girl Shahira back with another video. As you can see today, I'm in my little setup that I've got in my room, which means I will be sitting down and talking to you guys and giving you the knowledge, dropping gems, giving you tips, whatever you want to call it. The topic of today's video is the MCAT. Just at the mention of that word, I know medical students everywhere, maybe even residents, possibly even physicians. You can see my dog in the corner eating his food. Oh God. Kobe, you're gonna have to move. I know just at the mention of those 4 letters, there's medical students everywhere who are shuddering, maybe possibly even residents, probably even attendings, honestly. The MCAT is just one of many hurdles that a pre-med has to get over to get into med school. So hopefully I'm here today to make that just a little bit easier for you guys. So I'm gonna give you my top 3 tips. No, okay. Number 1 tip, major key. Listen up, because this is the most important one, okay? This is where I almost screwed up. Almost, because your girl is in med school, so I didn't screw up. So just have to make that clear. Anyways, do as many practice problems as possible. Practice tests, practice sets, practice problems. Keyword is practice, practice, practice. One more time.
Practice, practice, practice.
I'm telling you, you are going to get sucked into doing content review, reading the Kaplan or the Princeton review books from front to cover, memorizing formulas, memorizing vocabulary words. It's going to seem like information overload, and you're going to feel like you need to know it all. You're going to feel maybe like you want to know it all, and you're going to feel like that's the only way to be successful. But honestly, the key to the MCAT is as much practice as possible. And so there's 2 reasons for that. One, I think, sure, the MCAT itself was hard. It's a challenging test. But mostly, in my opinion, the most challenging part is how long it is. And so usually you're not used to taking tests that are 7 to 8 hours long. At the most, a final exam in college might be, I don't know, 3 hours, 3-4 hours, but you double that, and that is how long you're actually sitting for an MCAT. So the content is challenging, but I think having the mental headspace and the endurance to sit there and take a test and have to think at such a high level for such a long period of time is in fact the hardest part of it. And so when you're doing your practice tests, not so much your practice questions, because if you're only doing like a 20 question set or something, this maybe won't apply. But whenever you're doing your practice tests, you need to stimulate testing conditions as most as possible. By testing conditions, I mean don't have your phone sitting right next to you, don't have readily available food and drink, because you're not going to be able to snack in the MCAT. They do give you little breaks in between each section if you want to run out and get a bag of chips or granola bar or use the bathroom or something. It would be helpful to not have food right next to you, even though it might be, you know, maybe it's a late night and you need to stay up, or, you know, maybe food is just comforting to you. But if you're doing a full length practice test, an 8-hour practice test, you shouldn't have food or drink or anything like that. Also, I mentioned earlier, like the amount of breaks that you get. If you're going to simulate testing conditions, you need to simulate the amount of breaks you're going to get as well, because as I mentioned before, endurance is huge. That's all the name of the game with the MCAT. And so if you're taking a break every, you know, in between a test, or a longer break than you would actually get on your actual MCAT day, then you're not really ever going to get used to what it feels like to sit there for 7+ hours to 8 hours to take that test. So the second reason that you want to do as many practice problems as possible and make it realistic is that, once again, content is important, but the way that they ask questions on the MCAT like the odds are super slim, like 0.0000% that one little factoid on the corner of page whatever in the biochem book is actually going to be on the test. I highly recommend understanding concepts, making connections, looking at the bigger picture. If you're running out of time, definitely focus on that. If you're running out of time for studying, don't try to cram in as many like little factoids as possible. If you're running out of time to study, or you feel like your test day is approaching, you're not to where you want to be, look at bigger pictures and concepts and making connections and things like that. And honestly, the more practice problems you do, you understand how they're going to test you on the test, and you will quickly realize that it's more bigger picture and less little factoids and little vocabulary words. Another cool thing about doing so many practice problems is you will catch holes. You'll fill in the gaps that way. So you do a whole bunch of questions, you get, you understand this skill, you understand that formula, and you get to this one, you're like, Jesus, like, I've never heard of this. This is confusing for me. I don't understand this concept. And then right then and there, dive into some content review, using your questions to guide your content review and not the other way around. Okay, so in conclusion, practice. Use the practice that you do to figure out what you don't know, and use that to help guide your studying. And then, of course, when you're doing your practice, make sure it's as realistic as possible. Now, this next tidbit of advice might be a little controversial, but just hang with me. It worked for me. It might not work for everyone, but I just want to share this bit of knowledge that, once again, can help anyone be successful who maybe thinks like me or studies like me. And everyone's going to have their weaknesses. So I know a lot of people, what they do is they try to so there's a phrase that says jack of all trades and a master of none. So you're trying to do really well in all the sections, but you don't really have time to master any one of the sections. In my opinion, what I did was I picked 2 sections that I know that I could do really well on. Not saying that I totally just like neglected the other 2 and didn't study and didn't do as well in them, but these 2 sections I was like, I feel like I'm guaranteed at least X score. So if this score is, Z and Y, then I can get this overall score. And I took a class because self-studying, I actually mentioned this in one of my earlier videos, I knew it just wouldn't work for me. And in this class, they taught a lot of strategies. And these are things that it seems like really simple and really common sense, but when you implement them, it can make a world's difference in your score. Okay, so I really focused on cars and I practiced. That is something that I did every day. If it was a phys day or a chemistry day or a sociology day or whatever, I always started the day with some cars and then moved into whatever other content review I was gonna do. And then the second thing that I focused on was the biochem section, and that was because that's what my major was in. I majored in cell biology, so I had a really firm background in that. So just making sure that I was really strong in that, and that I built up myself to be strong in cars, and then psych-soc and phys and chem kind of took a backseat to those 2. Just something that also might or might not be common knowledge. Psych-soc is kind of like easy points. You could probably like cram a lot of those definitions. If you've already taken the 2 classes, which if you're pre-med you should have, you can probably cram a lot of those like definitions and concepts in a week or 2 before. Again, I'm not recommending cramming, but I'm just saying that's typically like the easy section. So I let like the easier section kind of take a backseat, and then my hardest section I took a backseat, and I really kind of neglected that one. But I knew that if these 2 could be really strong, and then psych-soc could, potentially be average or even strong because it was easier, then I didn't have to focus so much on that last one. So instead of being like a jack of all trades and a master of none, I made sure to really master at least 2 or 3, and then 1 or 2 kind of fell on the wayside. I hope the way that I explained that made sense and didn't seem like I just totally like blew off those other sections. I absolutely did not just blow up those other sections, but I did prioritize certain sections and gave more time to other sections, whereas some people give like equal time to every section. And I think it's really misleading when people, they give you these books and like, you do all the books, you do all the questions, or I think there's a way to be strategic to make sure that you get you can maximize your time, also maximize your prior knowledge, which you already know. All right, and then my last tip, or my last major key, would be realistic about the kind of studier that you are. So and I mentioned this previously, but there's pretty much two categories that you can fall into. You can be a self-studier, or you can do a class. And I tried both of them, and my reasons for picking one over the other were not even based on what kind of studier I was. I leaned more towards doing the self-study route because that's mostly what the people who were mentoring me and the people who taken the MCAT before me, most of them had done that. And B, because it was the cheaper way. And though those are two things that you definitely should definitely pay attention to. Like if you have really good mentors and they give you really good advice, of course, I'm not saying ignore what they say. And of course, money is huge, especially when applying to any professional school. But I think what's most important is what kind of studier you are. And I tried to self-study for a month, and I did not, maybe not even a month, I'm probably giving myself too much credit. It probably only lasted for like a week or two, but it felt like a month. It felt like the longest week of my life. I wasn't getting anywhere, I wasn't making any progress. I would study after an entire day and realize that I'd only gotten through like 1 or 2 chapters of content or information. I realized that I need structure, whether I am given the structure or I'm able to like structure things out for myself. Someone can't just give me a book and be like, here, learn this. I need an outline. I need some guidelines, some schedule to follow. And because MCAT was uncharted territory for me, it was very helpful if someone else could make that structure for me. And that's mostly what classes do. A lot of people think that you go and you register for an MCAT class and the main thing you're going to get out of it is them teaching you the actual content. But the biggest thing that I got out of the MCAT class was the structure, the timeline that they gave me, of course, along with the resources, as well as some strategies that I otherwise wouldn't have picked up on or wouldn't have learned on my own that aren't necessarily included in the books as well. When you take an MCAT class, most of the time there's like this online thing, and it shows, first you start off with a diagnostic test, and most of all that score is like trash. It's terrible. Don't even like get caught up and think, oh, I'm never gonna be a doctor. If that score is terrible, it's supposed to be terrible. It's supposed to show you where you are. And then the even greater thing is that in the end you can see how far you've come. Like between my diagnostic and the score that I applied with was like a 20-point jump. Like that's how drastic the change was. And then at least for Kaplan, I'm speaking on behalf of Kaplan because that's what I use. I didn't use Princeton Review, so maybe it's different, maybe it's the same. I really wouldn't know. But the structure of Kaplan was you always had like some pre-work, you had work, and you had homework or post-work. And so the pre-work might have been like practice questions from the stuff that you did the day before. The work might have been like a couple high-yield topics that they're asking you to focus on for that day. And then post-work might be like to review what you just did, or to outline what you just did, or do questions on what you just did. And I really liked that because otherwise I wouldn't have thought to structure it that way myself, and then I also wouldn't have thought or even known what the high-yield topics were. And so when you're taking a test, when you're taking a class, they can't teach you every single thing. They can't highlight every single thing, because most of the time these classes are like boot camp classes that last like 3 weeks or a couple months. So there's no way that they can touch on every single thing. they do a really good job of touching on the high yield things. And so taking a class helped me focus on the high yield things. Whereas when I was self-studying, I was trying to study every single thing, and I was wasting time and I wasn't getting really anything done, besides just frustrating myself and making myself just feel more discouraged. Like, how am I ever gonna get through all this stuff? Well, realistically, I mean, you can, but it's gonna take longer. But do you necessarily need to? I don't think so at all. Like, I did just fine, and there are some chapters in some of those books that I didn't even touch, to be honest. And in conclusion, you need to figure out what kind of study you are. Are you the kind of person that you have enough discipline or maybe enough background knowledge to know what things are high yield and how you should structure those things? And if not, maybe a class might be for you. Again, I understand those classes are really expensive, but you kind of have to think of it as like, this is an investment into your future. And I think it's definitely an investment that has paid off, and you'll look back and you'll be glad that you did it. It might save you even more money in the long run having to apply multiple times. So either you spend the money on the front end investing in a class that will get you on the right track, or you spend the money on the back end applying to a lot of schools because you have a low score and you're not really confident in your score, so you're trying to maximize your chances of getting in, and then also applying multiple cycles, which is all those schools times 2 or times 3, how many ever years you decide to apply. There are so many more things that I could say, and a lot of the things that I just said are really specific to my journey and things that I encounter, things that I realized while studying for the MCAT. The things that I've been through, or the things that I've experienced, could, even if it's just like one little sentence in here that you're like, aha, like that aha moment, and it really just like kicks your studying into overdrive, that is like honestly the goal. But if you have any like specific questions or want me to dive deeper into anything that I just mentioned, like, please, you can message me on Instagram or drop it in the comments, and I would love to do like a spin-off video. But if I listed every single little thing that I did or everything that I learned, this video could easily be an hour. But yeah, I think I said a lot of good things. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys next time.